Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Cosmic Hour. I am Astro Krys, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Emma. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Chris. I'm happy to be back again with another episode so soon.
Yes,
It
and
hasn't it hasn't even been like 2 weeks and we're already back with another episode.
yes, well, we're on a roll. We're super excited with all the astrology that's happening this year. And I mean, I think as the astrology keeps on progressing, we might, come on more often and then maybe take breaks whenever it's slower. So we can, talk about exciting things as they come up and then also get our well rested, deserved breaks whenever the astrology gets slower. But today we're here to talk about the eclipses, which it's always exciting. I think eclipses are amazing. I actually found my partner during an eclipse. So, I wasn't born during an eclipse, but I do have something, an aspect called being born during the bends. I have my sun squaring the nodes, my moon and my sun actually. I was born during a full moon, and my sun and my moon square my north and my south nodes. So I have a aspect to the eclipse because the nodes are part of the eclipse. So I feel like this connection to eclipse, and I like the erratic nature that they have. I also was born with Uranus conjunct the south node. So there's something about eclipse that brings like a lot of excitement. So I'm happy to join you today and just talk about eclipse and how that's going to develop this year for us. So, yeah, how about you? How do you experience eclipses?
So I'm always looking forward to eclipses. I'm particularly excited to talk about this one because there's been a lot of clout on the internet, on TikTok about this topic. Social media is buzzing these days. But for me, I personally feel that eclipses are really the time when the universe is just taking control and taking over, right? So there's not much that we can do during these times. So I always suggest people to just sit back and ride the wave and, let the universe, take control, take the wheel. And because it does bring faded moments and major changes to our lives. Like you mentioned, you found your partner during an eclipse. So that's pretty cool.
Yes, because I was definitely not looking for a partner during that time. I was open for a partner. I was open to find love, but it wasn't something that I was like looking for. So, when it happened fairly quick and it just felt right. So I think that's why I'm fascinated with Eclipse because like you said, there's something just so nice and beautiful about just letting the universe take control and just like ride the wave and just let the possibilities and the opportunities open up for you. And you still have free will because you'll see all these opportunities and all these things come up, but you just have to trust the process. I think that's one of the biggest things when eclipse season happens is just like having great faith and trusting the process, yet finding a way to be grounded and centered so you don't feel overwhelmed because there is like a lot of changes and a lot of things that are moving around. It's like a lot of moving puzzles or pieces. And that can be a little bit overwhelming or seem overwhelming. But when things settle down, you'll see that a lot of the times they settle down in your favor, especially if you were open to it, if you're open to the changes. So exciting times.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to take you guys really quickly to some like history of a few eclipses that we're going to cover. I'd like to, when it comes to eclipses, I like to go back and look at patterns and kind of put everything together. And this is how I analyze the energy of certain eclipses. And I don't do this for all of them, but especially this one, I had to. So for every eclipse, I do sit in meditation and I ponder about like, the energy first. I look at the chart and then from there, I kind of sit in meditation and see what comes to me during meditation. And a lot of information came in, and one of it was going back to an eclipse that kind of started the path through the Americas, which was the Leo eclipse. And this happened August 21st of 2017 at 11:29 a.m. And sorry, I didn't use the colons. So it was 11:29. This is not a date. Sorry about that. But this eclipse was very significant for me. I actually remember the day and like what happened, what I was doing this day. I'm actually a Leo rising. So it was very important because when I casted this chart for the eclipse back in that day, I noticed that the midheaven was right on my ascendant. So I made sure that I did something to honor the eclipse on this day. So I remember having lunch outside and I safely witnessed the eclipse. It wasn't full 100% visibility where I was located. I'm in Los Angeles, California. So I think it was between 40 to 60% visibility. It's still a beautiful sight to see, so it doesn't go completely dark. It's like a shade. I don't know. I can't describe it so well, but I'm going to try my best. And whoever witnesses the eclipse, please comment below. Let us know wherever you witnessed it from and how you like, perceived the energy and how, you experienced it, because wherever you're at, I really feel it's a nice experience, even if you don't experience it 100% dark, for you to experience so you know how it feels. Um, but I feel like it's like a real dark cloud going over the sun. So it's like dark, yet you can still see it, like, so it becomes darkened but it's still light and you can still see. So it's a different type of dark, but not 100% dark like midnight. Um, like how in a total eclipse can make it happen, like have it appear when there is 100% visibility in the area. It's just completely dark. So whenever you have different percentages of visibility, the light is coming through more, so it's not as dark, yet it's still like a nice experience. Either way, I remember just, having lunch and just sitting and watching the eclipse, and I had my eclipse glasses and I was just kind of sitting and just like there was like a lot of planets in this chart that were in alignment with mine. And I just kind of opened up to the universe and said, yeah, I'm embracing astrology and the journey 100%. And that was the intention. That's what I set the intention to do. And I said, I'm going to make astrology like a pivotal, uh, pivotal subject thing in my life. And it has been since then, since 2017, it's been a pivotal thing in my life, everyday thing. I mean, astrology is something I do every single day since then. So I can't forget this eclipse. Now, the path that this eclipse took, it came in from Salem, Oregon, and then it traveled through entire America, North America, went through, and then it kind of exited out through like the Carolinas, and it ended somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. I mean, sorry, Atlantic Ocean. It entered from the Pacific and ended in the Atlantic Ocean. So that is the first eclipse that we're going to cover. The second one is the Libra eclipse that just happened recently back in 2023. This one was at 10:54 a.m. PST, which would be what time EST, Emma?
154.
Yes,
Yeah.
1:54 EST. So a lot of the placements, especially the outer planets, are going to be pretty similar. There's only like, Pluto was in Capricorn during that time. Pluto since then has moved on to Aquarius. So there's that change. Um, but Saturn is in Pisces, Neptune's still in Pisces, Jupiter and Uranus are still in Taurus. Um, Chiron's been in Aries, and it's actually like right at the eclipse point still. Um, we have the North Node at 25 degrees, which is pretty close to where Mercury, I think Mercury will be at 25 degrees in Aries or around that degree. We'll look at the Aries eclipse chart soon. So let's just kind of take note on that. But this was a South Node eclipse because we have the sun, the moon, and Mercury conjunct the South Node. Now, the North Node and the South Node, the eclipses are different. Whenever the eclipse conjuncts the South Node, it's all about letting go of something. And when it's in whatever sign it's in this time, because we're having the eclipses in the Libra/Aries axis, the North Node being in Aries, the focus for development is Aries, and the focus for, I guess, cleaning up and letting go is Libra, or like recalibrating is Libra. Then this South Node eclipse is bringing attention to the Libra house where we kind of had to clean up this area. Themes of partnership, themes of collaborating, themes of how we, um, you know, speak with others, how we present ourselves with others, also how we're able to interact with others. Like it's all about the we in the relationship. It's that I think that's very important because you can be in a partnership and be a very sucky partner, whether it's a romantic partnership or not. Business partnership is still partnership, right? So it's all about cleaning up all those bad behaviors that you are bringing into those partnerships, letting go of them. So then you can focus on the other side, which is the Aries axis. And that's where this Aries eclipse is now bringing in the focus. So this Libra was like, hey, identify these areas. So it's kind of bringing these things into focus for you. And we had a pretty broad square. It wasn't like a nice perfected square, but it was there from Pluto to the sun and the moon and the node, um, kind of asking us to dig deep and find our inner power, like really pushing us. So some of us kind of, exploded from within and just like, well, like had to like let it all out. Maybe, something kind of triggered us. And it might have brought up some insecurities or traumas or, you know, some uncomfortable feelings because that's what Pluto does. It just brings in things that are not like so easy to talk about, but that's where the gift lies. If we are able to purge these things out, we find that we become liberated. We were able to shed and find easiness after, like we're able to have a better journey after because we no longer carry all this weight or carry this fear or trauma or anything like that. It doesn't define us anymore. So that was the gift. And you can see Pluto also making this aspect to the North Node, but it's a tough one. It's not a super easy one to do. And since that eclipse, we've been kind of working on that. Some of us maybe did this quickly. Some of us we've been kind of working on since then. I'm not sure if you want to add anything else, Emma, that you've noticed or you're noticing in the chart.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that codependency is also another thing that we had to clean up or let go of during this eclipse, the lunar eclipse in Libra, to be able to step more in our own power and more in our own authority when it comes to relationship.
Oh yes, that I mean, I think that's a real big one. Um, yeah, codependency.
Yeah.
This is I there it's a delicate balance. I was actually talking about this with my mom the other day, and she's a baby boomer and she later years, but she really appreciates her independence, and she always admires couples where the husband or the partner allows the wife to do things on their own. And she was like, yeah, she's traveling the world and doing this, and her husband lets her do that stuff. And then I kind of bring my perspective, and I'm like, that doesn't really sound exciting for me. Like, I would rather, like, I'm okay with doing that once in a while, but if you're in a partnership and your husband is always letting you go by yourself and he's not interested in sharing these experiences with you, then why are you even married? And then she kind of sat there and like looked at me, and she's like, huh. And I'm like, if I'm gonna be independent all the time and travel to Spain and travel to Cancun and travel here, and I'm always doing it on my own, I'm not really traveling with my girlfriends because most of my girlfriends, their husbands don't let them travel on their own. Then why am I even married? And she kind of sat there and she's like, you're right. Um, and she's like, I guess there should be a balance. Um, so it was an interesting conversation because she was like kind of admiring the relationship that one of her friends had with her long-term boyfriend. They're not, she never remarried after, and she thought like it was really nice that her boyfriend let her do whatever she wanted, and she was like traveling all these places by herself. And no one really could go with her because no one allowed their partner to go with her. And she was like complaining, oh, no one's letting them because the husband says no. But I was like, Mom, everyone travels as a couple to these places. Like, it's okay if you travel with your girlfriends or whatever, that's fine. But if she's traveling on her own, and that's one of the things that her friend was complaining to my mom, and my mom didn't understand it until I put it in that perspective. She's like, oh, and that's what she said, that she feels lonely. She's like, I didn't understand it until you said it in this way, because I guess her friends stopped talking about it after because my mom wasn't understanding what she was trying to communicate to her. My mom thought like, oh yeah, that's so cool. Because my mom's always been very independent. Like, she doesn't check on anyone. She just does what she wants whenever she wants. And that's how it is. And her sisters are fairly independent that same way. So it's just that's the dynamic. And my grandmother was the same way. So she doesn't know any different. But then I'm like, you're the exception, because that's not really how the rest of the world functions. When you're in partnership, you usually do things together, but then we also need to balance, like you said, that codependency, because we are also we also should be allowed to do things individually as individuals when we want to, but then be able to do things together in a healthy fashion when we can, without it being toxic, or there's being arguments about, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that, or you can't do that because I'm upset, or I get jealous or whatever. So the relationship factor of that. So yeah, that's really good point about this codependency stuff. Like you said, it's a big deal. It's a big deal in any type of partnership, honestly. So anything else that you
Um,
noticed?
no, let's look at the map.
Awesome. So then this is the route of the eclipse. And this one also went through the Americas, but as you can see, it mainly went through the land. So it went through North America, and then it's exiting out through South America. And then lastly, we have the Aries eclipse, which is about to happen soon on the 8th of April at 11:20 a.m. PST and 2:20 p.m. EST. And what we've noticed here is that we have the sun and the moon at 19 degrees, and the node is at 15 degrees of Aries. So now we have this concentration in the very independent sign So we also have Mercury at 24 degrees, like I mentioned, to take note of the node. And the node was at 25, right?
Yeah, it was at 25.
Yeah, so we have Mercury kind of inviting that energy over. Even though it's not exact, it's pretty close. Jupiter and Uranus are still close to their same degrees. I mean, they've retroed back and forth, and they're about to join pretty soon because they join April 20th, and we're going to do a video about that. So you can check that out after. But what Emma and I noticed is that the ruler of the eclipse, which is Mars, is also making a very important conjunction, which is conjuncting Saturn. And these guys are important because they're the malefics of the the planets. So in astrology, we have planets that are malefics and we have planets that are benefics. So planets that are good and the planets that are great. And I feel like all planets are they can all express good and bad. Honestly, I do. However, like, we can say Saturn is good. The way that it the way that Saturn's good is not going to be the same as the way that Venus expresses good, right? But it can still bring very good things to you. It's just in a different fashion, in a different way. The lessons are different. So all the planets can express good, but in general, in Hellenistic and medieval astrology, Saturn and Mars, they were categorized as the malefics because they were the ones that were in charge of the like big issues in life, the issues that will, push you to the edge and cause rebellions and troubles in your life and, a lot of even illnesses and, things like that. So, that's why they're they're forced to reckon and there's something that we need to pay attention to. So when I notice that Mars not just only rules the eclipse, it's also making a conjunction with Saturn. For me, it's like focusing on that conjunction is really important. Um, one thing that I want to mention before Emma and I get into the Mars and Saturn conjunction before we talk about that, let me see. I think I wanted to talk about, shoot. Nope. I I lost my train of thought with that. So I'm moving on. So there we go. It'll come back to me if I remember it. So let's talk about the Mars and Saturn conjunction. So Mars and Saturn are going to conjunct on on April 10th, which is 2 days after the eclipse. Now, when Mars and Saturn conjunct, this is a cycle of discipline. Um, Mars and Saturn bring a lot of dedicated lessons, like a lot of work through lessons. They require that we work quickly but effective and with good work ethic. They need us to slow down, but Mars wants us to work fast. And this is what causes very erratic, like,
Behavior.
yes, erratic behavior, erratic tension within us as well. And you will see this in the collective and also within you. I actually was born during a Saturn Mars conjunction. My conjunction is separated, but I was, during 1984, we had Mars and Saturn conjunct in Scorpio, and I have Mars and Saturn in Scorpio. So I'm very, very familiar with these two and the energy that they bring. Mars is super impulsive, and I tend to be very impulsive, yet Saturn is very conservative and very reserved and very fucking slow. So I struggle with both because I want to go fast, yet I feel like I'm like a carriage, and then I have like a master that's like pulling me back, not letting me go anywhere. Emma actually had a really good analogy. You want to share, Emma?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, like Mars, it likes to go fast. Mars is like go, go, go energy versus Saturn is more like slow down, take your time, let's, climb the mountain step by step. So for me, like whenever Mars and Saturn conjunct, like the energy reminds me of when you have like when you're driving and you put one foot on the gas pedal and one on the brake and then like you're not going nowhere because like the wheels are just turning and turning but you're going nowhere. So that's an analogy that comes to mind for Mars Saturn conjunction. And I don't know if you can relate to that. Like, I mean, your example of the carriage and then somebody pulling you so slowly is very similar to that.
Yeah, like I feel like, the wheels are just like turning and like skidding, and you're like going nowhere and you're like
Nowhere.
getting all frustrated, like move. And it's like going nowhere.
Yeah.
So
Mars wants like fast action, fast results, and Saturn is more like for the long term and wants to, do things for a longer period of time.
exactly. Exactly. Yet Mars does really well in the Saturn signs.
Right.
And even in Vedic astrology, Mars is not friend to Saturn, but Saturn is friend to Mars. So Saturn likes Mars, but Mars doesn't care to be Saturn's friend. um, and in Hellenistic astrology, it's similar. Saturn likes Mars, but again, Mars doesn't really care for Saturn. And when we think of their mythology, we can think of Saturn as like the grandfather, and then maybe and Mars actually is Saturn's grandchild because Jupiter is Saturn's um son, and Jupiter is Mars's father. So technically, Mars is grandson to Saturn. So we have the grandfather archetype and the grandson archetype. And here you have the wise old man giving advice to like the reckless young adult, because this is not like a teenager. This is not like Mercury energy. This is like young man, like, I am a man, pounding his chest, boom, boom, boom. Like, I know what I'm doing, boom, boom, boom. Right? And then like the old man's like, I've done that before. I've acted like you before. I don't really think you know what you're doing, but okay, I can give you counsel, I can give you advice. And then Mars like, I don't need your advice. Boom, boom, boom. Right? So it's like it contradicts an energy, yet Saturn is able to get through to Mars because it understands. It's like it's so wise. It's already gone through a few Saturn returns. It's already done so many Mars returns, right? It's already experienced so many Sun returns. Like it's been collecting wise lessons that's why Mars can do great in Capricorn because it benefits from the wise energy. But the other way around, Mars needs to be able to be open to that. Now, they're both in the sign of Pisces, and Mars does okay in the sign of Pisces. Saturn, I actually think Saturn does okay in Pisces too. That's my opinion. However, there's mixed opinions about this. Saturn is actually in its grace in the 12th house. That is the house where Saturn finds joy, and the 12th house is ruled by Pisces. So that's why I also feel that Saturn can do really good in Pisces because it's similar themes, but it's still not the same thing. The 12th house is not Pisces, but they still have overlapping meaning. So I really do feel that Saturn finds some relief in the 12th house because of, you know, Saturn has a lot of burdens. So when it's in the sign of Pisces, it could release, it could like purify, it finds like a baptism of sorts. It finds a Christianing of relieving himself from all his sins and burdens and everything he had to go through. And it relieves himself instead of carrying all this weight and all this responsibility, it can liberate himself. So that's why Saturn can actually be more free in Pisces. But no matter what, wherever the planet Saturn is transiting, it will bring a test because he is the test master. That's what he is. So he's gonna initiate discipline. What else do you think Saturn will bring? The lesson of Mars and Saturn together to the collective.
Yeah, well, it is going to bring discipline, like you said. I also think it's going to give us like some sort of like endurance and perseverance to follow through with our project. Now, you mentioned you were born with a Saturn Mars conjunction. I was born with a Saturn Mars trine. So I have the I think I have the easier aspect of those two planets.
Yes.
And we're really able to like follow through and focus on, you know, on our goals, and especially make our goals become long term and actually see them through with a Mars Saturn conjunction.
Exactly. Because no matter what, once you master the energy, the keeping your eye on the prize is easy. It
Yeah.
really is. And I'm one that I am okay with long-term goals. I've always been okay with long-term goals. Instant gratification is something that I also enjoy, but I know it's only going to be for that moment. But I actually feel more satisfaction, more gratitude, more happiness when I achieve something that I've been working on for a longer period of time. I'm a Pisces, so I'll cry and I'll feel all this joy and all these emotions. And that makes me feel amazing. Like I accomplished, like I'm on the top of the mountain, like the top of the world type of stuff. Um, and even dreaming about it, like thinking of me achieving it makes me feel emotional. That's how much this conjunction like really like it's like within me, like it really like plays a big number on me and how I strategize and how I plan. Like it really gives me a lot of endurance. It helps me with manifesting, honestly.
Yeah.
But you have to learn how to use it because Mars can be impulsive and Mars can be pushy. It wants things now, and you have to learn to master Mars. It's like Saturn is, having a tight rope on Mars, and Mars is like that dog that wants to like go everywhere. And oh, sorry. Mars wants to go everywhere, and Saturn's like, nope, we're gonna go there. We're gonna get there. Just enjoy the ride, enjoy the road. So you have to take things slower, and as you enjoy the road, you're collecting rewards, you're collecting experiences, and that's enriching the process. And then when you get to the big reward, that's where you find mastery. So I enjoy it. I know others wouldn't because they want that instant gratification, but we're having this new cycle as a collective. So on a collective level, this is a time when we will see that societal structures are going to change a little because they're going to try to impose new controls over us, or at least efforts to do so, because it's a time to rebuild for them. They're rebuilding new foundations. Um, this conjunction of Mars conjuncting Saturn happens roughly every 2.5 years. So I think the last time they conjunct was in Aquarius, and then the time before that was in Capricorn, and that was in 2020. And that was during the time when we had the last presidential election. So, I mean, we're about to have another one. Um, so makes sense. The one in Aquarius started some stuff in Europe, that we're kind of not talking about anymore. So yeah. So you'll see, authority, and Mars is um war. So government, authority, fighting. So we'll see those themes play out. Now, where the good things come about is it's also time to build a new foundation that is based on our belief system that can be long lasting because it's founded on new faith. And if we really focus on building something that you created based on your faith and whatever that is, your upbringing, whatever you're learning, and you really feel it from the heart center, you're really feeling this, like it's really connecting, really speaking to you, and you're building these beliefs because you're being called to, like, this is what I really believe, and I'm going to follow these beliefs. I'm going to be this type of person. I'm going to live my life this way. I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to share my love, my compassion, like towards the people that I care for this way. I'm going to just lead my life this way. You're going to see that these two planets can bring a lot of good things into your life and really heal this energy, heal this area of your life, that wherever you have your Pisces house, bring true liberation here. Um, Pisces is one of the most misunderstood signs because it's so complex. It's invisible, it's mystical, it's mysterious. So we're having the malefics conjunct here. So for some people might be confusing. For people that already have Pisces placements, I don't really think it's going to be confusing for them. I actually think it's going to be grounding because Saturn has been like reality checking all their
Mm-hmm.
all their dreaminess. It's like they're usually up in the clouds and Saturn's been tying their balloons down. So, so I mean, I'm a Pisces sun, so I know. I sometimes we need that, right? We need that reality check. After all, we exist on Earth, we in this 3D world, so we have to be tied to this 3D world to really thrive and survive. We chose to be born, we chose to exist, so we have to exist here and also have a very rich spiritual life, but be grounded in the 3D world. So we can find it. We can master this. And we can't forget about Neptune. I mean, he's not really being aspected as much, but he is in the sign of Pisces in the last degrees. And I mean, this is a unique transit. We're not going to have Neptune in the sign of Pisces. We're not going to experience this ever again. For as long as we live, because Neptune takes very long to go around, make a full circle around the zodiac. So this is it. It's very unique. So we're pretty much just enjoying the last couple of degrees of Neptune being in Pisces until it goes into the sign of Aries. So it is playing some part here. Neptune is a current ruler of Pisces. Jupiter is the ancient ruler. So yeah. Let me see what else. Some keywords or key lessons for this conjunction is patience. You have to have a lot of patience. Be strategic with your actions, accept the challenges, and focus on long-term goals. So if you're able to do that, this eclipse is just going to be a piece of cake for you, because even though the eclipse is about fast new beginnings because it's Aries, pretty much the underground energy is slow. So Aries looks fast, is new beginnings. Do this fast, do this quick. And Mars wants to go fast. And this is why it's going to be challenging, because Saturn's like, no, no, no. Yes,
And
Mars.
not on,
Oh, go ahead.
and not only that, we're in a Mercury retrograde too, so we do have to slow down.
Exactly. And we're going to have to redo things. We're redoing things from the past eclipses. This is why I'm bringing up the past eclipses. So it's been a few things that are kind of coming back, right? Like we might not remember, and those of you that have been following astrology for a while, maybe you do take your notes and you have an astrology journal that you've been writing your things down. Go back and look at your journal and see what you wrote down, what you were doing during that time. And if you don't have one, hey, start it now, because maybe 2, 3 years down the line, if you ever want to go back, you can always go back. I love doing that. I love
Or
documenting those things because you can always go back, especially on important events. You don't have to do every single thing that's overwhelming, but do really important things, and you'll see, especially things that are in alignment to your chart. You'll see that eventually there's a reason why you were called to document them. There's a reason why you felt called to write about it or journal about it, because eventually you'll go back and read about it.
I want to say that before I started getting into astrology and documenting all these major events, I started looking at my pictures on my phone, my camera roll, to see what I was doing around that time. Like for example, 2017. I wasn't looking at the eclipse, so I had to go back to my phone and see where I was and what period of my life I was at, or even go on your Instagram if you can look at your older posts. So that's a little cheat
Tip.
sheet.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I do that too. Even
Yeah.
if we're not into astrology, because nowadays we kind of document everything with pictures or whatever we're posting on, like you said, Instagram or Facebook, or I don't know, even if you upload to Pinterest or whatever. Yeah, check all that, because you can actually find what you did based on that. So, yes, go ahead and do that. And, you can find out what it is that you were doing during that time and how you were. It doesn't even have to be the exact date. It could be around that time. It could be like, oh, around that time I took a trip, or oh, around that time I broke up with so and so, or around that time I started a new job. Whatever it was, it just kind of will bring you like the theme, like what it is that you were experiencing and why is it that it's coming back again. So, this is the path that this new eclipse is going to be traveling through. So it goes through the Pacific, it goes in through Mazatlan, Mexico, travels through Mexico, and then goes into the Americas through Texas, and then exits the Americas through Canada. And this is all the eclipses put together. So we have the 2017 eclipse, we have the 2023 eclipse, and then we have the solar eclipse in Aries that is happening. And I just kind of very quickly, put together all the charts so we can just see what we see that is like little points that are kind of coming up that are repeated. The first thing that I noticed is that Jupiter for the 2017 eclipse was at 20 degrees Libra, and the 2023 eclipse was at 21 degrees Libra. So we already see that 2017 was talking to 2023. Sorry, I'm probably going to get tongue-tied here. So maybe I just say Leo eclipse for 2017, Libra eclipse for 2023, and then Aries eclipse for the current eclipse. Maybe that'll be easier for me. So that's the first thing that I noticed. And then the Leo eclipse was making a conjunction to the Libra eclipse with that Venus and Mercury. So that's another thing that I noticed. Anything else that you notice, Emma?
Well, we spoke about the Mercury,
Yes.
the North Node on the Mercury retrograde, but we also have what is that, the Uranus of
Yes.
the Leo eclipse also at that around that same point.
Yes. So it's now we have like three of them around that same point. We have
Right.
Uranus 28, the North Node 25, and Mercury 23. I mean 24. So boom.
Yeah.
All the eclipses, same point. Um, Similar Pallas Athena, 12 degrees. then Jupiter 13, and then over here, Jupiter again at 19 for all. Though it's a little off, but still the same. Um, and then I mean, you can see the eclipses, the Aries eclipse and the Libra eclipse, they're very close to each other in degree, and that doesn't, that's a big strong pull. So we have 19 degrees of Aries and then 21 degrees of Libra, and they're very close to each other in degrees. So that's also something that I noticed. Um, harmonizing that axis, Neptune at 13 and
Oh,
Mars
yeah.
at 13. So that's where Neptune's coming in through there. And then Neptune here is making an aspect to the midheaven here. So, there you can see there's a lot of points being triggered based on their, just kind of laying all the charts, all the charts of the eclipses. And this is the path. I just grabbed these images online. I didn't alter them in any way. They should have their original credits. You guys could zoom in if you want to know who made them. I did not make these images. But we have the first eclipse that happened in 2017. This is the Leo eclipse, and it entered the Americas through Salem, Oregon, and then it's traveling all through here, and it's exiting the Carolinas. And then we have the 2023 eclipse, which is this eclipse right here, again entering similarly around Salem, Oregon, and then traveling down this way. And now we have the Aries eclipse, which is this eclipse over here. And then it's gonna exit this way. So this example just kind of talks about how there's a connection to Christianity, and it's kind of coding this. And I just wanted to include it because there's a lot of TikToks and Instagram reels and YouTube reels or shorts or whatever they're called about this eclipse and the connection to Salem cities and also Nineveh cities. And I just found that really interesting. Next is the composite chart. So what I did is I grabbed all three of the eclipses and then I created a composite chart. And this kind of harmonizes the energy of all the eclipses and makes it into one. And I kind of wanted to see like what the energy of all the eclipses together, because if we're looking at this map and we're getting the energy of this eclipse, and this eclipse, we want to see what the harmony of all those eclipses together looks like. And one of the things that I've noticed that I really found a lot of comfort in was that Jupiter is exactly conjunct the midheaven. And then we also have Venus there. And the Aries eclipse had a theme of the Saturn and Mars conjunction, which is the malefics together, but this one as a unity, as both of these all these eclipses being harmonized. We have Venus and Jupiter together, which are the benefics together. And then we have Jupiter exalted in Cancer, and it's like right at the midheaven, like exactly conjunct the midheaven, which for me brings me like a lot of comfort because it gives me like a sense like everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna resolve itself. So in this chart, we have Mars in Scorpio that is in rulership, making a trine to Neptune in rulership as well. And they're both making a sextile to Pluto. So that means they're harmonizing things. Now Mars does make a square to Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn makes another square to Uranus and Taurus. Uranus makes a opposition to Mars. So it does look like there's some tension coming from these three. So there needs to be a reinvention of sort, a reinvention. Like Mars was the ancient ruler of anarchy and rebellions before we got Uranus. Uranus now rules that. But before, the outer planets were added onto astrology, Mars was the ruler. So now we see that Mars and Uranus as an aspect together usually symbolizes a period where we need to stand up for humanitarian efforts, and Mars likes to rebel and do it forcefully. So they're kind of, both of them are kind of rebelling onto Saturn, who is in rulership in the sign of Aquarius, because he's the ancient ruler of Aquarius. So towards towards authority or governmental structures, and that's also in opposition to the sun and the moon. So that's the eclipse, the actual composite eclipse of all of both three eclipses. So and it's in the 11th house. So what it's looking at, like, it's gonna harmonize towards the people. The people are on the top. All the bottom, like Mars is in the bottom. So it's like Pluto's in the bottom, Saturn's in the bottom, Neptune in the bottom. So all, like, it's psychologically everything is working underneath. And then we have like the good planets like the sun, the moon, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, the North Node. I mean, Uranus can be either way. Not necessarily good or bad. um, but they're on top, right? So Uranus, we need Uranus to evolve. So we need that evolution to change. And there was this really good book that I just recently read, The Golden Future by Diana Cooper. And actually, this chart reminds me of that book. I feel like everything she speaks about in that book is what this chart is talking about. How in the future, just things are going to be so much different, and all this new technology that's coming in is just going to be so different for us. Our life is going to be completely different, something that we cannot imagine right now, because we've been living we've been living primitively yet very advanced, but we're still tied into old primitive ways. Like, we still want things in, old fashioned ways, and we have all this technology that we're not utilizing correctly, and we're still not freeing up our time correctly. And we're going to find ways to free it up and then reconnect to nature. And I think that's where humanity is going to benefit from this, but it's not going to be without us having to reinvent ourselves and needing to awaken. And that's where we need this, like, tool. Like, we need to make sure we uncover, like this, it's, and I hate to use these words, but I'm going to use them. Like, we need to, like, remove the veil. We need to clean our rose-colored glasses. We need to really understand what's going on. I've said this before. There's a lot of times that I read information or I study certain things and it doesn't make sense to me. Yet I still hold on to it. I still hold on to the information. And like years later, I could be driving and then I get an epiphany and I'm like, oh my God, that's what it meant. And it's like, at the time that I read it, I wasn't ready for the information. Like, my brain was too primitive. Like, it just wasn't there. Like the vibration or the energetic energy of that information was not in alignment to me at that point. But something happened. I had to grow into it. And the minute that I caught up onto that information, that I was in alignment to it, it's like an epiphany. Boom. And I get it. And I understand it. And I get so excited because I want to share with someone, and no one's gonna understand me, or no one's gonna get it. Um but I'm hearing, I'm in the car driving, like, just like so excited, like, I get it now. I understand what that means. So this is what this chart reminds me, is this book. And I read this book a few times since it's came out, and it has so much rich information. It's actually pretty out there. Um, but trust me, when you read it, you're gonna understand why. And I've been seeing this configuration often, this eye configuration. Now the eye configuration is not widely used. Uber was Uber. He was one of the um astrologers that used it more. He uses it more for personal astrology, so not necessarily for mundane issues or like mundane interpretation. But the eye configuration likes to get info because it's a semi-sextile and it's joined by a sextile. Sextiles are lazy. They're ruled by Venus. And semi-sextiles, they don't have because they're not traditional rulers, they're not traditional aspect. They don't have like a ruler assigned to it, but I kind of feel they're like connected to the Mercury energy. Like that's what I feel like they're assigned to. So that's why they like to collect information. So Mercury and Venus, they're not real big doers. The real big doers are Mars and Saturn. But Mercury can do things. It's just like a lot of the, not real big follow through. But they'll do here and there and then move on to other things. Gemini, right? A lot of things, then move on. Um, but either way, look at how this eye configuration is focusing on the midheaven, Jupiter and Venus, and then the North Node is one of the legs here, and then this eclipse is one of the legs there. It's just kind of like how the collective is like absorbing and changing and collecting information so it can act. And in order for the eye configuration to really be successful, needs to have an outlet, and it does. It has this aspect of Jupiter that's really strong, making an aspect to Saturn. And then it also has this trine to the South Node, right? It also has this square to Neptune. It has from Venus another square to Neptune. It has from Venus a well, I don't know, it's not showing as a sextile, but it's probably a semi-square, to Uranus. So there's ways to like come out. This energy is coming out. So we're gonna be able to execute as it's collecting information, it can execute out. So the masses, the collective, everything that's happening now, we're gonna see it in the future. And this April eclipse is gonna trigger this seventh house energy. So just found it interesting. This is my way of analyzing this chart. I don't know if you want to add anything, Emma.
Not really, but with your analysis, like it kind of gives us, it gives me a little bit of positive hope with this eclipse versus, all the, when there's a lot of fear mongering on the internet, especially, with eclipses, people are freaking out. So this is giving kind of like a little like positive hope.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so this is the other image that I wanted to show. And this is where I had the idea of making a composite chart because in order for them, I mean, whoever made this image, they're kind of tying all the eclipses together. And what they're saying is, look at this, the 2017 eclipse goes over the city of Jonah. And then in ancient times, Jonah visits the city of Nineveh because he was called by God through premonitions to psychic downloads, etc., to go to the city of Nineveh, which was a very advanced city. Yet in that city, there was a lot of things that were not in alignment to God. So God called Jonah to be a messenger and tell the people of Nineveh that they needed to change their ways. He didn't want to get rid of the city because the city had a lot of good gifts and they were very advanced, and there was really good people there too, but they needed to change their ways. So uh Jonah was part of that story. So then this 2024 April 8th, 2024 eclipse is going to travel through a bunch of cities called Nineveh. So it goes down this line. So Nineveh, 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 and then it exits down over here at Nineveh, Nova Scotia in Canada. And then they also mark this path of the Leo eclipse that happened in 2017, where this eclipse kind of makes that intersection and it goes through Rapture. So city Rapture, and it looks like this is Indiana. So it kind of intersects there. And there's also a city called the Ark, Williamston, Kentucky, which I was like, oh wow. Um, and this 20, this is the 2023 eclipse over here, that intersects the city of Jonah with the 2024 eclipse that's about to happen. So I was like, wow, okay, so let's go ahead and do this composite chart and just get the energy together. And when I was doing that, I started getting my own little downloads, and I'm like, there's ephemeris for this. There's a bunch of ephemeris for eclipses, and I mean, astronomers have this on lock. Like they have, I showed this website to Emma where they have eclipses documented all the way to 2500. So I mean, we can see where the path of these eclipses are going to go until then. I mean, we're not going to live until then, but there's a book published already that has it printed, and you can see the path of these eclipses. And I was like, is this really a coincidence, or do you think that they purposefully named these cities so when the eclipse will go through, this would be a like another realignment of the people, because the people were then going to be reminded, hey, look what happened. Like Jonah needed to go to Nineveh. Boom, 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 boom. And all these cities that were along the path of these eclipse were going to be called Nineveh. I mean, the US is not an old nation, right, Emma?
Yeah, no, it's what, like 250 years old?
Exactly. And I mean, um we have the ability to document eclipses for like,
Especially eclipses. I feel like eclipses have been very important throughout history, especially with kingdoms and like the example that you were giving earlier before we jumped on the podcast, the conquistador. So they knew. I like you said, like I don't think there are any coincidences. But I mean, uh, they they were able to not predict but see the eclipses that were coming in the next 250 years, like for sure.
for sure. So what Emma's talking about is, and I forget the book that I read this, but if you are interested in knowing the book, then comment below and I'll definitely search for it and give you the title so you can read it yourself. It's not necessarily an astrology book, but it talks about the eclipses in history. It's always really good because astrology uses eclipses to just, read up on that and, get informed, because as astrologers, we use eclipses. And I was reading this book, and one of the early chapters talked about how the conquistadors got the indigenous people of the islands that they landed, like the Caribbean islands that they landed, and also Mexico, to comply with them and also believe that they were gods themselves, because they would use the power of eclipses. So they knew when an eclipse was coming, And what they did is in that example that they in that book, they said, um, they made them believe that they were gods. And they said, if you don't do what we want you to, what this, we want you to do this. So if you don't do this, God will punish you. And there's going to be this in the skies, which was an eclipse. The sun will go dark. There will be no sun. And that is a sign from God that you're being punished, blah, blah, blah. So then it happened. And then the people were scared, like, oh, wow, and then they complied. And I just thought that was like the most manipulative shit ever. Like in my head, that stayed in my head. I had to put the book down because I was like, wow, what the fuck did I read? I guess I took it personal because I'm Mexican and I do have indigenous blood, but I also have Spanish blood. I'm not 100% indigenous. So I'm very proud of my heritage. I'm proud of having European blood. I'm proud of having indigenous blood. I am a mix because I am Mexican. I kind of took it a little bit personal because I was like, wow, this is how they manipulated the people. They were using the skies. And I mean, we know that the Europeans were well versed in astrology because that is where astrology, the type of astrology I practice, comes from. So they were using astrology, they were using the navigation of the skies. That's how they navigated the skies. They used the constellations to go across the oceans. They were navigating with the sky. And they used that to their advantage, and then they used it specifically with that civilization. And this book also talks about other um civilizations and everything. So I don't know. I don't know if this is a coincidence that all these cities are named this and it's passing through there. I really don't think so. I kind of think that this is a um done on purpose. So it could be a recalibration because two things could happen. We can be reminded to kind of fall back into place, or we can then be awakened at the same time. So there's going to be two things. Like you say, whoa, this is a sign, and that's fine. But then you can also see, like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Right. So, um, and you can make up your mind. This is another image that I found that I thought was interesting. In this image, I found it again. I didn't make it. I didn't just download it from online. I guess whoever made it, that's them. Um, but they have this quote on here, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day and the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." And that's exactly what astrology is. Astrology divides the seasons, and the sun and the moon divide the day and night. And the sun cycle does the years, um, and the sun and the moon does the days. So I just thought it was nice to just put it in. Now they're connecting this pattern that the August 2017 eclipse is making and the 2024 eclipse is making to this letter, this Hebrew letter, which is going back to the time of Ezekiel, but I'm not going to get into that. This is another image that is also, again, going back to those times and pointing out all the cities that are named Salem that are being triggered by the eclipse. And I never knew we had so many cities named Salem.
I had no idea either. I thought there was only two, but
Yeah, I was just like, oh, wow. Yeah, this is crazy. So, and they're all along the same path. And Emma said something when we prepare for this stuff. And she said something really interesting because like I told her what Salem meant, and it means in Hebrew it means peaceful, safe, complete, and perfect. And even when I found out the meaning of Salem, I was like, wow, like even saying that, it makes me not feel like it means that, because Salem has meant something very dark in history. Like we've Emma and I have gotten to like down the rabbit hole with the Salem witch trials.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of Salem, the first thing that comes to mind is the Salem witch trial.
Yeah,
Uh,
so that would mean the peaceful witch trials. I don't think so. They were not peaceful at all, huh, Emma?
really interesting that this is what it means.
Yeah, yeah, so and for me, I feel like if Salem means peaceful, complete, perfect, safe, like that that point in history, that event in history took all that significance away from me. Like I don't feel like that will ever mean that for me again. Um, honestly, because that in history, the Salem witch trials were not peaceful at all. It just
Yeah,
kind of disturbing to find out that Salem means that.
yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of weird. But yes, it looks like um both of these eclipses are going not just through cities that are called Nineveh, but also through Salem. Um Now going back, because I did mention about Jonah and Nineveh, I am Catholic and I'm a practicing Catholic, and I did want to just, talk a little bit about that, and not necessarily wanting to talk about religion, but more like looking at it as a myth, a mythology itself. Astrology is full of myth, and I feel like the Bible has stories. Similarly, we can look at them as that. I know they're not mythologies, but we can look at it as a story. Well, Jonah, in the book of Jonah, and we're not going to go into the discrepancies of like how accurate this is or not. I'm just, going to retell it on how the story goes, and very quickly. So Jonah was called by premonitions of listening, to his inner voice of God calling him to go to the city of Nineveh. And Nineveh was a very advanced city. So think of like one of the biggest cities in the world that we have now, that has, all the riches and all the technology, yet there's really good people there and maybe not so good people there too, right? And Jonah gets called to go to that city, and he needs to tell the people in that city to change their ways. And if they don't change their ways, that God will destroy that city. So Jonah is refusing to follow the calling. So he's probably feeling some kind of way, like, I'm not listening to this. I don't want to do it. I want to listen to God. I don't think I want to do it. So he goes on a boat and he refuses to do it. While he's on the boat, he gets thrown over and he gets swallowed by a large fish. I don't know what kind of large fish can swallow a human. Again, animals get extinct. But I mean, the largest fish that I know now that can probably swallow a human could be a whale. But back then, I mean, animals are always becoming extinct. So there could have been a fish large enough to swallow a man back then. I don't know. And he gets swallowed by this fish, and he's inside the fish's belly. And in that belly, I'm sure he's goes into this meditative state where he's again communicating with God, and he comes to terms to God and with God. And again, he then decides to go to the city of Nineveh and tell the people what God has told him to tell them. He gets spit out by the fish, and when he gets spit out, he's right there at the doorstep. Boom. So he needs to go tell them. He tells the people and he relays the message. The people do change. So then the prophecy does not come true. at least not at that time where the city gets destroyed. Eventually, the city does fall because it ceased to exist about 600 years before the coming of Christ. So it's no longer a city that exists now. But it didn't happen during the book of Jonah. It's something that still existed. So the moral of the story, and this is why I wanted to share it, is about having absolute faith that things are going to work out no matter what. You just have to follow your instincts. You have to follow your gut. You have to follow your intuition. You have to follow the signs and really believe with very, very strong faith. So if you have this very, very strong faith that things are just going to happen as they should happen, as they should be, things will work out for you. And I feel if you follow this very strong faith, then you lead with that faith. You release anxiety, you release doubt, you release fear. You're able to take action, you're able to take clear direction much easier, and things turn out better for you. So I know there's a lot of things out there, mentioning this and that and this. And yes, eclipses bring a lot of change and a lot of shakeups. And I'm not going to say they don't, because they do. And change of fate and events. Um, they're life changing, but some of those events are beautiful and well needed and welcomed. And if we're not opened and really believe and trust the process, we might be blocking some of our blessings, just like how he was blocking some of his blessings, right? So we just have to believe with an open heart that everything's going to work out. And as long as you are following your truth, your belief, then it will work out. And I really do feel that it fits this energy of Mars and Saturn and Pisces, because the energy of Pisces is to have great faith, like this unbelievable, unshakable faith, this faith that no matter what, you're going to survive anything. Because that's actually the season of Pisces. It's the end of winter. It's like you're at the end, you're at end's wit. You have no more food. This is it. But like once Aries season starts, you start anew. Like the birds start chirping, the food, like there's gonna be food, there's gonna be running water. So there's hope after this. So I think that this eclipse has both that essence, like that energy of Pisces, that energy of Aries, and the energy of Taurus. So it has like all those things of like having great faith, new beginnings, and then fertile abundance, because we have Mars and Saturn in Pisces. We have a bunch of planets in Aries. We have the sun, moon, Mercury, Chiron in Aries, and then we have Jupiter in Uranus and Taurus. So that's the fertility that it's bringing. So it's the moral of this story is really being represented by this eclipse that we're experiencing. Then moving on, I wanted to bring in Dolores Cannon. So in my meditations, Dolores Cannon came in really strong. And I'm trained as a QHHT practitioner. And when I was meditating on like the essence of the eclipse, I kept on getting like Dolores Cannon. And I was like, why are you coming in? Why are you coming through? I was like, no, I want messages about the eclipse. And I kept on getting her come through. Like it was her image and then her messages about the new earth and us shifting and us becoming 5-dimensional and like a new wave, like the new volunteers activating. We have a lot of new volunteers, people that are born already, they're here, but we're activating, we're helping people evolve, we're here to be healers. We're here to assist other people. So I was just like, okay, why is this coming through right now? Like, I'm asking about the Aries eclipse. Why is this happening? So after I finished my meditation, I was like, let me cast her chart. And then the first thing I noticed, I was like, oh God, she's an Aries. She's already in Aries. She's an Aries sun. And it's at 24 degrees. So Mercury retrograde right on her sun. We also have the North Node. So the Libra eclipse was right, like those nodes were right on her sun. And she has natally the same nodes. So we actually have a nodal return for her because she is a north node in Aries, sorry, and a south node in Libra. So I was like, okay, this is why you're coming through. There's like a lot of Aries stuff going on for you. She also has Uranus at 15 degrees right on the nodes. That's where the eclipse is happening, right? The nodes are on 15 degrees. I was like, okay. So then I wanted to pull up her passing away chart, and I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So she's both triggering the Aries eclipse that is about to happen through her birth chart, and her passing chart is triggering the October eclipse that just happened because she passed away during a Libra sun. And she passed away at 25-degree Libra sun, and the eclipse was at 21-degree Libra. And what's at 21? Look at Mercury retrograde at 21-degree Libra. So I was like, oh, okay. So then I'm like, okay, so what's the message, Dolores? So then I went back into meditation, and I was like, why did you come through? What's the message? And I remembered something I watched. And she was talking about how there's going to be a collective division, and that souls are going to start evolving to 5D. And when I was listening to this was a few years ago, and I was like, I believed it with my whole heart. I believed it. And I was like, how is this possible? Like, I couldn't like imagine it. Like, I was trying to imagine it. And I was like, but how? Like, how is it actually happening? Like, what do you mean? Like, how is it going to happen that we evolve to 5D? And she's like, you're just not even going to notice. It's just going to happen. It's already happening. It's happening. It's going to happen more and more and more people are going to happen. It's just going to be a massive awakening. And so many people are going to be doing it. And it's just going to be so quick. And whew, I was like, wow. And it was just like, but how? Like, how is this happening? What's happening now with this eclipse is because the sun, the moon, and Chiron are conjunct. Chiron is the wounded healer. So we're going to see a massive healing. A lot of star seeds get an upgrade of healing and collectively come together and start healing. We're going to see a massive shift of people. And a lot of us are going to see changes in our life with some people that we might not ever get to see anymore because they might be still in existence. They're just never going to be someone that we meet ever again because they're not going to be in our existence. They're not going to be someone that we are able to, speak with, collaborate with, talk to. We're just not going to be in the same vibration anymore. We're growing apart. We're growing differently. We're in a different trajectory. We're in a different earth, like how she mentioned. And it's totally making sense to me now. I know it's sounding different, but
Crazy.
but there's just too many synchronicities with her chart. Even the composite chart of these, so the composite chart of her natal chart and even the day that she passed, look at it triggers her Mars
Mars.
and her MC, the MC of her passing and her Mars. That's where
Mhm.
the sun is at. And she natally had Jupiter at 12 degrees. That's where Sirius sits. So Sirius is it's a fixed star, and that's where the constellation of light beings come from. And they're actually a group of beings that um pretty much we can say can take credit for evolving humanity. They're the ones that have been really involved in evolving humanity, in evolving us in the way that we're compassionate and caring towards others. They've been playing a big role in that. So she natally carries that. I believe she was Syrian myself. She never mentioned her starseed origin. She kept that a secret, but I really do think she was Syrian based on her chart. Um,
Mhm.
but let's see, I don't know if her daughter will ever disclose what she was, but yeah. So that's why I needed to mention her. She came in to my meditation. She was coming in strong. She wouldn't stop. And I mean, there's too many synchronicities going on with her chart and everything that is happening. So I just needed to mention it. Um, but now we have another event that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so as you guys know, I am from Haiti, and right here we have the birth chart of, or the natal chart of Haiti, and um there are recent events that has been happening the past month or so. And I thought it was really interesting because the transits right now and the eclipse are actually triggering Haiti's chart. So the inner wheel is the natal chart. I'm not gonna go over the country's chart, but I am gonna talk about the transits of what happened that day. So just to give you guys a little background, about 3 years ago in 2021, I am pretty sure everybody heard that our president was assassinated. And since then, really, we haven't had any leaders. We did have a prime minister that's been ruling by himself, basically. But ever since then, there has been a lot of increased in gang activity. Basically, the gangs have been taking over the city or the country, basically. Um, and on March 2nd, around at 7:31 p.m., that's the time that's on the board right here. While the prime minister was out of the country, the gangs decided to break into three major prisons in the country, and about 4,000 prisoners were liberated. And ever since then, the airports have been shut down. Actually, the gangs took over the airports. Flights have not been coming in and out. The prime minister was basically blocked out of the country and not able to come back in. It's been a month now as we're filming this, and there still is no airline operation. But to talk about the transits of that day, the first thing that, well, there are a lot of things going on in that chart. And the first thing that I noticed at first is the South Node was exactly conjunct the country's Uranus. And we talked a lot about Uranus, being the planet of rebellion, chaos, upheaval, revolution. And the South Node, a transit to the South Node is more like a releasing point. So it really activated that revolution and that like upheaval energy. Another thing that I noticed was Mars at 14 degrees of Aquarius that day was exactly conjunct the country's North Node. And actually, I've noticed that Mars has been I noticed a pattern with Mars when it comes to certain events with Haiti, because I remember back in 2018 we had our first lockdown, what we call lockdown, in July 6th of 2018. And again, that's when like the gangs did a whole lockdown of the country for a couple of weeks. And that day, Mars was in Aquarius, and it was very close to the North Node. And it was also with the South Node at the time, so it was making a nodal opposition. And then there were a lot of things going on in that chart, but I just wanted to point out that Mars is always doing something whenever there is some increased activity, especially with the gangs. And then even if we look at the earthquake chart that happened in 2012, Mars again was conjunct, this time the South Node. So Mars, I've noticed, is a very active player when it comes to like very like, I don't want to say terrible events, but very aggressive events, let's say. And then looking at that day again, we notice that Uranus is also making an exact trine to the ascendant, again, activating that rebellion energy and really supporting that, like that upheaval movement. The moon that day was in Sagittarius at 5 degrees, and it was actually squaring the natal moon. Actually, it was making a T square to the country's moon and the country's Pluto at 6 degrees of Pisces. So I think that was really interesting because like the moon that day was in a very tense aspect, kind of like stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing I noticed again was that look at Pluto at 1 degrees of Aquarius. It's making an exact square to the country's MC, which is the legacy, the image of the country, like the basically how we're seen, how the country is seen, and it's literally going to a total deconstruction right now. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news, but we've been in the news a lot more recently, and like it's the image that is being projected. I mean, with for obvious reasons, but I feel like the country's image is going through a total like deconstruction. Like really, like what the image that I'm picturing right now is like a bulldozer coming over and really like it's kind of like a total removal of how the country is seen to be again reborn again when hopefully all of this you know when we come out of all of this.
Yeah.
And then the eclipses that are happening on April 8th is actually going to make an exact square to the country's ascendant at 19 degrees of Capricorn. So I just thought that it's good that is going to keep on activating the country's chart even more.
In the fourth house. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then one thing too, Mars at 14 degrees in Aquarius is making an exact trine to Uranus.
Uranus, yeah.
Yeah, in Libra, in the 10th house. So, and it's coming from the second, right? From the second house. So it has to do with money and resources, and it's leading to the country's power. So this is all a battle over the country's resources and power. And I don't know why, but I had told you, oh, I'm going to talk about this, and this is what I'm going to add to the conversation. And I didn't even notice, like I paid no mind to it, that the eclipse was happening in the fourth house. And the fourth house is underground. It's everything.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned this to Emma that when I was doing my research, I did, I was researching the economic state of Haiti, and I know nothing about the country. I've never even visited the country. But they're estimating the country to have so much wealth, yet it's one of the poorest countries in the world. And it's been like that since, I mean, it's been affected by earthquakes and things like that, like in the past. So it's had it was an earthquake and a hurricane, right? It was both. uh,
Yeah, we had a few hurricanes.
right? That had like caused state of emergency that required help. So
Hmm.
it's gone through a lot of transformation. I mean, Uranus rules earthquakes. It totally makes sense. You have that natally, they have that in, in whole signs. Uranus is in
The
the 10th
10th.
house, so it makes sense. They carry that in their in their image. But the fourth house, where they're having this eclipse, it's talking about things underground. And in this search, it said that they're actually estimated to have a lot of worth because there is a lot of natural resources, that there's a lot of gold and something called iridium. And this metal right now is worth more than gold and Bitcoin. I don't know how outdated this information is. I'm not sure if it's worth more than Bitcoin, because I know Bitcoin in the recent months has like tripled. Um, and I don't know when this information came out. It might have came out sometime last year, so it might be inaccurate in regard to Bitcoin, but I know definitely it's worth more than gold. So it's worth about 45K per ton. And this was information that I found written by Dr. Henry Vixamar. So, um, Haiti is one of the only countries that you can find this rare metal. This is a metal. And the reason why this metal is super sought after is because it has a very high resistance to high temperatures and corrosion. So it's very indispensable in aircraft engines, and also for deep water pipelines, which is good for oceans, right? Like going into and getting petroleum and all that. So it's going to be good for, for that, which is going into the topic of Neptunian things, because Neptune rules petroleum and all that in the ocean. And you can see all this energy here in Pisces underground. So we don't get to see that. We're not really seeing this because it's all underneath the chart, but you can see the conversation here where the fourth house is like underground. No one's really talking about this because it's in the fourth, and they're kind of keeping it in the country. Remember the fourth house? It's like what happens at home stays at home. The drama at home, no one shares it, no one talks about it. You want to keep it internal. You deal with your own dirty laundry at home. You don't mention it, you don't talk about it. So I really do feel it's kind of tied into these natural resources, and that's why they're seeing a lot of these rebellions from the people. And the reason it's probably trickling down to the people is because they're in very impoverished situations, or like very impoverished circumstances, and they're tired, they're fed up. I mean, it's a Virgo moon. They have a Virgo moon, and it's at 1 degree. So it's a very youthful energy to the moon, and it's already natally, it's opposing Pluto. So they're feeling disempowered, right? And they're not getting a lot of support from their country. So they already also have a lot of Capricorn planets. Capricorn is a struggle. So you see that because of them not kind of fixing the situation of getting their government in place, the people are getting affected, and then the people are kind of taking control. And then one thing else that I mentioned to him, I was like, what is it with the French and like breaking people out of jail? Like, I know Haitian are not French, but if you go back down the history, once in their lineage, the French did conquer, attempted to conquer, and this is how we got this date. This is when they gained their independence from the French, right, Emma?
Hmm. Yeah, correct.
So, but the same thing happened with Marie Antoinette. Like, they jailbreaked They went to the jails and they jailbreaked a bunch of prisoners.
Yeah, the Bastille, the Prise de la Bastille, yeah.
And I'm just like, what is happening here? Like, okay,
Well, we learned from them.
exactly. And if I recall, was it Marie Antoinette that had Uranus in the 10th too?
Yeah, there was
Right?
something like that, yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and I'm just like, ugh, I mean, look at that. So it's just you can just it's just craziness. Honestly, I just hope Haiti the best, and I'm just hoping that the reason why this hasn't been sorted out is because their new natal chart, it's just not the chart that needs to be their new energy hasn't come yet. But once it does, it's going to
So
replace this one, right? So it's going to be
so
better circumstances for them.
you think we're gonna have a new chart?
Yes, when the nation reinvents itself, you'll have a new chart.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other things that I want to say and mention, but for security purposes, I'm not going to. Um, but let's just say that what is going on right now, it feels like a sort of like purification that is taking place and that needs to take place for, like you said, like a new nation, or yeah, like a new nation to emerge.
Yes. Because not just, the reason I'm saying a new chart's going to take place is because it's not just like electing a president that needs to happen. No, it's really restructuring the government.
Oh yeah.
And that's why a new chart will take place. Because the restructuring of the government will cause the nation to create a new chart. I actually and I actually saw this recently. So Macedonia what became a new nation March 27th of 2020 because Greece fought them for many years. They couldn't keep the name Macedonia because it has rich history, and technically Greece and all that area was ancient Macedonia. So they needed to, like, Greece was fighting over that name, saying, no, you cannot keep Macedonia. So now they're actually called North Macedonia. So they let Macedonia keep the name of Macedonia if they added North Macedonia. So now the country is no longer called Macedonia. It's actually called North Macedonia. And Greece is called Greece, but within Greece, they have like a province, or like what we would consider in the US a state, that is called Macedonia. So that's why they kept on fighting Macedonia. Like, you cannot be called Macedonia because we have an area in our country that is called Macedonia. So they kept fighting for that name. And their thing was like, this whole area was Macedonia. So we're Greece. You need to give it that name up too. So eventually they kind of settled on, you are now considered North Macedonia, and the name Macedonia no one can have. So even that territory is Macedonia, but it's part of Greece. So North Macedonia now has a new chart, and it's March 27th of 2020. So that's something similar is going to happen to Haiti. So this chart will no longer be their chart. It's like the government will reinvent itself. It has to, because they could have just elected someone else. They haven't done it because of the way that the government is. So there needs to be a real, like,
And honestly,
structure of
we're
it.
even though we did have our independence and whatnot, um we're not a quote unquote free nation. Like, we depend too heavily on the US, on what they have to say. Like, well, our government depends too much on the United States. Like, basically whoever has been elected in the past were, like, basically put in place by the US. So I think that will happen when we stand up and say no more, no more to that. That like we're not gonna let other nations like control us and what we do. I don't know if
Which,
that's doable, but
yeah, which honestly, I find that really hard for any of the islands to do because they have to be self-sustainable and self-sufficient. And I mean, nowadays, to really have an island be self-sustainable and self-sufficient, I think it's really hard,
yeah,
right? Like we depend so much on import and export. So I think that's why a lot of the island countries find it so hard to be independent, and they end up having like alliances and partnerships with bigger countries because of it, because it's just so hard to be self-sufficient. And you go to the islands and they're, I mean, beautiful places like paradise. Like who doesn't want to live there? But there's so much poverty because of the way of living there. It's not self-sufficient. Like the resources are lacking. There's not like a lot of ways to get things to them, and even the cost of getting things to them is so costly that, so I don't know. I don't know if that's possible for any island, honestly. That's just my opinion. I don't know much about this, but what I do know, that's what my opinion is. That's what I think.
yeah,
Yeah. But I really do wish Haiti the best. I've never been there, but I know the pictures that you've shown me is like a looks like a beautiful place. I'm sure like the beaches and the water looks like a paradise. And I wish the people can find peace, because to live in that kind of chaos, no one deserves to live in that kind of chaos, honestly. Um,
yeah.
yeah. So, just a little moment of silence for them, and that they find peace because they're still going through this. This has not been resolved. And I know you had mentioned that like some of the airports are shut down, they're not able to come out, and only a certain people can come out. So it's kind of like a scary situation right now. And even then, we can laugh about it and say, oh, yeah, the French did it too. They broke out prisoners. But we're talking about prisoners. They're on the streets right now. So, and these are people that have been in prison for a very long time, that some of them might not even have a place to live. So, what is it that they're doing to feed themselves and, shelter themselves? Hopefully they're not doing anything bad. But I mean, come on, that's hope, right? That's a hope, right? So if we can just do a little moment of silence for them. Yeah, and I hope this season turns out for the best for them, and this eclipse helps them develop more. Um, I mean, there's some good things that happen when the people stand up too. So it worked out for the French.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So that was our synopsis of the eclipse. Now we're going to do another video about just Aries and the predictions through all the zodiac signs. We'll link it to this one. Maybe you already watched that one first, and this is the one that you watched next. And if you did, thank you. Hopefully you like this and subscribe. This is more for the advanced astrologers, or the nerd astrology people that like astrology or learning astrology. So don't forget to follow us and subscribe, so when we upload more videos, you get to listen to us and learn astrology with us. Thank you so much. If you want any readings or services, check out our links below. Emma offers readings. She also sells candles, so check her services out. I also offer readings, but I have very limited readings. I offer more of my membership services, and I guide you through developing your practice. I do mentorship, but I do have limited readings, so you can check that out. Whenever something opens up, you can book it. So thank you so much for your time, and we will catch you later.
Bye.